First, uniqueness. All wages are currently growing, but low-skilled wage growth is vulnerable. Bosler and 6-1. A pickup in wage growth appears to be taking shape. Average hourly earnings rose 2.8%. However, wage growth in the sector with the lowest wage, restaurants and hotels, continues to decelerate. Next, the link. The plan allows for an influx of immigrants that crashes wages for low-skilled American laborers, increasing economic inequality. Borjas and 16. When the supply of workers goes up, the price firms have to pay workers goes down. A disproportionate percentage of immigrants have few skills. Low-skilled American workers, including many blacks and Hispanics, have suffered most from this wage dip. The earnings of this particularly vulnerable group have dropped. Immigration redistributes the wealth from the employee to the employer. Immigrants receive government assistance at higher rates. Immigration has barely affected the total wealth of natives at all. Instead, it's changed how the pie is split. The winners are primarily employers. Finally, the impact. Income inequality makes society unhealthier and more violent. Pickett and Wilkinson in 17. Inequality is a powerful social divider. Social hierarchy affects our ability to identify and empathize. Inequalities weaken community life, reduce trust, and increase violence. Rates of mental illness are 3 times as high in the most unequal societies. People are 10 times as likely to be imprisoned, 3 times as likely to be clinically obese, and murder rates may be many times higher. Now, going on to the affirmative's case advantages. First, they have said it's necessary to pass a background check and a disease check in order to enter the country. That means there will be huge lines, detention centers, and bureaucratic waiting process that inhibits people's freedom of movement and ability to enter the country. Second, open borders will worsen inequality. Johnson and 7. The receding of immigration laws will perpetuate increasing economic inequality. The federal government must ensure wage and labor protections are enforced for all workers. The law completely fails to regulate the secondary labor market in which immigrants are exploited. Finally, economic decline does not cause conflict. Dresner and 14. The average level of peacefulness in 2012 is the same as it was in 2007.
Okay, first about your Pickett and Wilkinson evidence, how exactly does decreased empathy and community lead to all the increased violence that your client claims?
So our argument is that the richest people in society will continue to get wealthier because they're more likely to be employees, and poor people get poorer. This creates a huge divide in society because people are not going to the same schools, they're not living in the same parts of the city, they're not interacting with one another, and they're increasingly seeing themselves as enemies, employee versus employer, rather than part of the same class and society. So that leads to a bunch of other negative effects that we talked about.
Could you go into more detail on how these negative effects, like the increased murder rates and obesity, happen?
Absolutely. So one internal link, or one reason that this piece of evidence gives, is the idea of social trust. So that's the idea that if you are on the side of the road, you see someone, no matter who they are, you're going to help them out, or you're going to be more likely to offer people favors, talk to your neighbors, get to know people. In an increasingly divided society, people don't do that, which means that violence is more likely to go unchecked, people aren't looking out for their neighbors, etc.
Thank you.